That's how many combat missions Jessica Mitchell's stallion, Thunder, had completed before trading the battlefields of Afghanistan for the peaceful pastures of Montana's Stillwater Valley. Now, watching through her kitchen window as Thunder's ears perked at something beyond the fence line, Jessica's hand instinctively moved to the worn cavalry saber mounted above her fireplace, a reminder of her late husband Thomas's service and sacrifice. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The locals saw what everyone else saw, just another war widow, trying to keep her family ranch alive in changing times. They didn't notice how Thunder's daily training routines mirrored military cavalry drills, how Jessica maintained the same rigorous schedule she'd learned during her years as an army veterinarian, or how she'd strategically positioned every fence post and gate to create natural bottlenecks across her property. Stillwater Valley had lived up to its name for the 3 years since Jessica inherited the struggling ranch, its small farming community nestled between rugged mountains and dense forest, having welcomed her warmly, especially after learning she'd served alongside their own. At 42, Jessica had already spent 2 decades treating military working animals in combat zones, understanding that sometimes the greatest weapon wasn't the latest technology, but the ancient bond between human and horse. Thunder himself had been her patient, a wounded cavalry horse she'd rehabilitated after an IED attack claimed his previous rider. Together, they'd found healing in this quiet corner of Montana, turning a struggling cattle operation into a sanctuary for retired military working animals. The first hint that their peaceful life might be changing came on an unusually warm spring morning. Jessica was checking the perimeter fencing, Thunder moving with the same controlled precision he'd used on patrol, when she spotted unfamiliar tire tracks cutting through their freshly tilled soil. Deep treads, wide wheelbase, definitely not typical ranch equipment. Someone's been scouting the property, she told Thunder later that afternoon, her voice calm but her eyes sharp as she studied the surrounding tree line from atop his back. Heavy vehicles, at least 3 different sets of tracks. The stallion's ears flicked back, catching her words with the same attention he'd once given to battlefield commands. His muscled frame tensed slightly, battle-trained instincts still, sharp despite years of peace. Their quiet observation was interrupted by the arrival of Sarah Anderson, their closest neighbor and the unofficial keeper of local news. The elderly rancher's usual cheerful demeanor was replaced by obvious worry as Jessica dismounted to meet her at the fence line. "Thought you should know," Sarah said without preamble. "Had some strange fellas asking questions at the diner this morning. City types, but not the usual real estate developers. These ones had prison tattoos and mean eyes." Jessica led Thunder closer, one hand resting on his neck while the other gripped the fence post in what only the most trained observer would recognize as a combat-ready stance. "What kind of questions?" she asked, her voice steady. "About which?" "Ranches in the valley might be struggling with bank payments, about properties that sit empty part of the year." Sarah's weathered face creased with concern. "They seemed mighty interested in your place specifically. Something about the previous owner owing debts to people you don't want to owe." Thunder's muscles rippled beneath Jessica's palm, the warhorse sensing the tension in her touch. "Got more," Sarah continued, lowering her voice. "My son's a state trooper over in Billings. Says he recognized one of their tattoos. Marks them as part of the Iron Valley Syndicate. They're not your typical criminals. More like a corporation that specializes in taking things that don't belong to them." Jessica felt Thunder shift beneath her hand, the stallion's battlefield training translating subtle changes in her posture into heightened alertness. The Iron Valley Syndicate had featured in local news recently, a supposedly legitimate business group buying up distressed properties across 3 states, usually after the owners suffered mysterious accidents or suddenly decided to sell at a fraction of market value. "Thanks for the warning, Sarah," Jessica said, her veterinarian's hands gentle on Thunder's neck, even as her military training assessed potential defensive positions. "We'll keep an eye out." After Sarah left, Jessica moved through her property with practiced efficiency, checking sight lines and mentally cataloguing strategic points. The skills that had once kept her alive in combat zones now focused on protecting her sanctuary. Thunder moved beside her, his hooves silent on the spring. Grass, their years of battlefield partnership evident in every synchronized movement. "Maybe we should call the sheriff," she muttered to Thunder, pausing to study a dust cloud approaching on the main road. The stallion's ears pricked forward, his posture alerting her to movement in the tree line she hadn't yet noticed. "But first, I need to show you something." She led him to the barn, unlocking a reinforced door that most would assume held veterinary supplies. Inside, alongside the medical equipment she used to treat retired military animals, hung tactical gear she'd kept from her service days. Specialized tack designed for combat operations, equipment that could turn a well-trained horse into a formidable partner in any confrontation. "I didn't leave everything behind," she explained quietly to Thunder, running her hand along gear they hadn't used since Afghanistan. "Some skills you don't just walk away from, especially when you might need them again." The dust cloud resolved into 3 black SUVs, moving with deliberate slowness past their property. Jessica's trained eye noted the vehicle's reinforced frames and tinted windows, not the usual tourist traffic looking for a charming ranch experience. No, she thought, feeling Thunder's muscles tense beneath her hand as he tracked the vehicles. Movement? These weren't tourists at all, because the men in those vehicles saw what everyone else saw, just another war widow trying to keep a family ranch alive in changing times. They didn't realize they were targeting someone who had spent years learning to turn horses into warriors, someone who understood that the most dangerous predators aren't always the ones who look threatening, someone who had spent her entire life preparing to protect the things that truly mattered, even if she hadn't known it at the time. The SUVs completed their pass, but Jessica knew this was just the beginning. The Iron Valley Syndicate didn't make social calls. They were hunting, assessing, looking for weaknesses to exploit. But they were about to learn that some targets bite back in ways they never expect. Sarah's truck appeared through the evening haze, kicking up dust as it approached their fence line. Jessica watched her friend's vehicle slow briefly when passing the fresh SUV tracks in their dirt road. "Those are new," Sarah commented as she stepped out, her feed bucket in hand. Like many in Stillwater Valley, she came from a ranching family and noticed things others might miss. And concerning, Jessica helped her carry supplies to the barn, their conversation casual, but their eyes constantly scanning. "Syndicate's been asking questions in town," she explained quietly. "About us, specifically." Sarah's expression hardened. Before inheriting her family's ranch, she'd worked as a trauma nurse in Billings. She'd seen what happened to people who crossed the Iron Valley Syndicate. They're expanding their territory. 3 ranches in Riverside County got burned out last month. Insurance called them accidents. Inside the barn, while examining a retired military service dog, Sarah lowered her voice further. "My brother works private security in Billings. Says the syndicate's changed, new leadership, ex-military types. They're not just thugs anymore. They use tactical planning, coordinated operations." Jessica's hand instinctively moved to Thunder's, a flank, as she processed this information. "They're probably watching us right now," she noted calmly, her combat experience automatically identifying the best observation points around their property. "Probably," Sarah agreed, completing her examination of the service dog. Then, under the pretense of checking her medical supplies, she slipped Jessica a folded paper. "List of frequencies they're known to use for communications. Thought it might." Be useful. Their conversation was interrupted by the distant sound of motorcycles. Through the barn door, they watched 3 bikes cruise past, expensive machines, their riders wearing expensive leather that couldn't quite hide tactical gear. Underneath, advanced scouts, Jessica observed, her military experience translating easily to tactical assessment. Testing response times, checking approaches. Sarah's hand brushed her arm. You're not alone in this. Stillwater Valley takes care of its own. Jessica smiled slightly, remembering why she'd chosen this community. It wasn't just the affordable land prices or the perfect location for her sanctuary. It was the people, ranchers who understood that sometimes you had to stand together against those who would take what wasn't theirs. After Sarah left, Jessica found herself in Thunder's paddock, methodically checking his specialized tack. Their eyes met in silent communication. They both knew the stakes were rising. "I've been thinking," she said quietly, her hand running along the reinforced saddle that had once carried them through combat zones, "about what they might be after." The old mining tunnels under the North Ridge had been one of the reasons she got the property so cheaply. The previous owner had lost everything trying to resurrect the mining operation. Perfect distribution network, she mused, scanning the ridgeline. Hidden entrances connected to 3 different valleys. Type of thing a criminal syndicate might find valuable. Thunder's ears pricked forward, his posture alerting her to movement near the tree line. Jessica's combat-trained eyes caught the subtle shift of shadows. Someone was watching, assessing, learning their routines. Her hand moved to the stallion's neck, feeling the power in his muscles. In combat zones, survival came from understanding your terrain, knowing every factor that could affect your mission. Those same skills could now protect their home. The sun was setting when they spotted another dust cloud approaching. This time, it resolved into a sleek black Mercedes flanked by motorcycles, the kind of arrival designed to intimidate. Jessica watched from Thunder's back, one hand resting on his reins, while the other maintained a loose, ready grip. The syndicate was done with surveillance. Now they were coming to make their play. But they were about to learn that some threats can't be measured by appearance alone, because Jessica Mitchell hadn't spent years training military horses and treating wounded warriors just to run a retirement sanctuary. She'd been preparing, without knowing it, for exactly this moment. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The black Mercedes pulled up to their ranch house with practiced precision, its spotless finish out of place among the working vehicles in their gravel driveway. Jessica noted how the motorcycles positioned themselves, one at each approach angle, riders maintaining clear sight lines. Professional work. A man emerged from the Mercedes wearing an Italian suit that probably cost more than their monthly feed. Bill, his immaculate appearance and practiced smile, couldn't hide the predatory assessment in his eyes as he studied their property. Marcus Blackwood. He introduced himself smoothly as Jessica sat astride Thunder near the fence line. Representing Valley Resource Development. Hope you don't mind the unexpected visit. Jessica remained mounted, knowing Thunder's elevated position gave her tactical advantage. Her keen eyes caught the subtle bulges of concealed weapons under the motorcyclists' leather jackets. Lovely property you have here, Blackwood continued, his smile never reaching his eyes. Especially those old mining access roads on the North Ridge. Must be challenging to maintain. Thunder's ears flicked forward, catching tension in Jessica's posture that would be invisible to observers. "We manage." "Of course you do." Blackwood produced a business card that looked more expensive than their tractor. "But times are hard. For small ranches, banks get impatient, accidents happen. We help people avoid unfortunate situations." Jessica's mind calculated distances and tactical positions automatically, just as she had during combat operations. The motorcycle on their left was 40 yards out, within Thunder's charging range. The one by the gate, maybe 60 yards. Challenging but manageable with their practiced maneuvers. "Not interested," she stated firmly. Blackwood's smile tightened. "A fraction. Everyone's interested eventually. Ask the Hendersons over in Riverside how refusing worked out for them." The name drop wasn't random. The Henderson Ranch's mysterious fire had made regional news last month. Total loss, insurance claim denied. They'd sold the burned-out property for pennies on the dollar to an unnamed development company. "You should take some time to think about it," Blackwood continued, setting his card on the fence post. "We'll be in touch." As the vehicles departed, Jessica's trained eye caught one of the riders speaking into a concealed radio. They were coordinating. With someone else, probably another team watching from the ridgeline. "They're not leaving," she noted quietly to Thunder, feeling his muscles tense beneath her. "Just changing positions." Through their barn door, Jessica spotted movement in the dense forest that bordered their property. Her military-trained eye noted the spacing and movement patterns, at least 2 more observers using natural cover for concealment. She guided Thunder in a casual circuit of their perimeter, but her attention was focused on cataloging tactical details. Bill Reynolds, who ran the local feed store, pulled up in his battered truck. The normally jovial man's face showed concern as he approached. "Saw those fancy cars leaving," he said, unloading supplies. "Same ones that were asking questions at my store yesterday, about which ranches might be behind on their payments." Jessica maintained her casual demeanor while helping unload, but her mind was processing this information with combat-honed precision. They seemed particularly interested in property records. "Not just records," Bill's voice lowered. "They were asking about the old mining network, about which ranches had access points, which tunnels might still be stable." He paused, glancing at the ridgeline. "My daughter works at the county assessor's office. Says someone's been pulling files on every ranch with defaulted loans or tax issues. They're making a target list." Thunder's ears swiveled, tracking movement in the tree line that human eyes might miss. Jessica felt grateful again for her years. Treating military working animals, she understood their signals, knew how to read the subtle warnings they provided. "There's more," Bill added grimly. "My brother-in-law works private security in Billings, says the Iron Valley Syndicate isn't just about real estate. They're expanding operations, looking for distribution networks that can't be easily traced. Those old mining tunnels, they connect to 3 different counties." Jessica's hand moved to Thunder's neck, feeling the coiled strength in his muscles. Her time in combat zones had taught her to recognize patterns, to see how seemingly unrelated pieces could form a larger threat. The distant sound of motorcycles drew their attention. Through the barn door, they watched 3 bikes cruise past, different riders this time, but moving with the same tactical precision. Advanced scouts, probing defenses, testing response. "Patterns. They're watching," Bill observed, his rancher's instincts reading the signs. "Probably have been for weeks." "Probably," Jessica agreed, her military experience translating to civilian threat assessment. Standard infiltration pattern: learn the target's routines, identify vulnerabilities, apply pressure at weak points. A drone buzzed overhead. Small commercial model, but equipped with a high-end camera. Jessica tracked its flight path automatically. The syndicate was recording their reactions, studying their responses. "They're probing our defenses," she explained to Bill, watching the drone's systematic movement pattern, looking for weaknesses, pressure points, standard tactical assessment. More vehicles passed on the main road, expensive SUVs moving too slowly, motorcycles making multiple passes. The syndicate wasn't bothering to hide their surveillance anymore. They wanted to be seen, wanted their targets to feel watched. Jessica's phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Brother says they're using ex-military contractors for muscle. Professional operators, not just street thugs. That explained the tactical precision she'd observed. The syndicate had evolved, combining criminal resources with military expertise, a dangerous combination. Through their kitchen window, Jessica spotted movement in the pasture, someone walking their property lines, taking photos and measurements. The man's movement pattern suggested combat training, systematic, efficient, always maintaining awareness of cover. They're mapping approaches, she noted, her combat experience having taught her the importance of understanding every aspect of your environment. These men were doing the same, but for a darker purpose. Bill's expression showed grim understanding. Years of ranching had taught him to read warning signs in weather, in livestock, in people. Everything about this situation screamed danger. Their landline rang. The bank. The loan officer's voice carried carefully crafted concern about reviewing their payment schedule. Another pressure point being squeezed. A truck stopped at their gate. Ed Thompson, their elderly neighbor. His face showed worry as he approached. "They're buying up water rights," he reported, "through different companies, but it's them, trying to control every aspect of valley operations." Jessica processed this information, adding it to her tactical assessment. The syndicate was implementing a sophisticated strategy, targeting not just individual ranches, but the entire infrastructure that supported them. More vehicles passed their property, more drones buzzed overhead. The syndicate was tightening their net, confident in their ability to break another struggling ranch owner. But Jessica Mitchell hadn't spent years working with military horses just to run a sanctuary. Those skills, patience, precision, performing under pressure, had prepared her for something far more important: protecting their home. The sun set over Stillwater Valley as Jessica watched more syndicate vehicles pass their ranch. They thought they were establishing dominance, demonstrating their power. Instead, they were revealing their patterns, showing their methods. In combat operations, understanding your opponent's approach was often the key to victory. The same principle would apply here, but with one crucial difference. This time the target had a warhorse. Dr. Rachel Martinez, the local veterinarian, pulled up in her truck just before dusk. Her military background, 8 years as an army vet before private practice, showed in how she immediately noticed the surveillance patterns. "They're setting up observation posts," Rachel commented quietly as she examined one of Jessica's retired military dogs. "Standard perimeter coverage, same setup we used in Baghdad." Jessica helped her carry equipment to the barn, their conversation casual, but their eyes constantly scanning. "Iron Valley's been asking questions," she explained, "about us specifically." Rachel's expression hardened. Her time treating military working animals in combat zones had taught her to recognize threats. "They're expanding operations. 3 ranches in Cedar County had their water rights mysteriously transferred last month, all properties with access to the old mining network." Inside the barn, while checking a retired cavalry horse, Rachel lowered her voice further. "My contact at Fort Harrison says they're tracking increased activity in the tunnel systems, sophisticated equipment being moved in, professional teams establishing bases. This isn't just about real estate anymore." Through the barn door, they watched another unmarked vehicle pass slowly. The driver's posture and scanning pattern screamed military training. "They're building something," Rachel observed. "Using the tunnels for distribution, the ranches for cover. Classic insurgency. Tactics, just on American soil." Jessica felt thunder shift beside her, the warhorse picking up on subtle changes in their tone. His battlefield instincts remained sharp, even years after service. "Got more," Rachel added, pretending to review medical records. "My brother works for federal law enforcement. Says Iron Valley's not just expanding territory, they're creating infrastructure, professional operation, military-grade equipment. Whatever they're planning, it's big." A drone made another pass overhead, its camera more sophisticated than standard commercial models. Jessica's trained eye caught the thermal imaging attachment. They were mapping heat signatures, probably tracking movement patterns. "They'll make their move soon," Rachel predicted, her combat experience reading the signs. This level of surveillance, the pressure points they're targeting. They're following standard military protocols for territory acquisition. Thunder's ears pricked forward, catching movement in the tree line before either woman noticed it. Through the gathering dusk, they spotted teams moving with tactical precision, establishing new observation points. "Nice horse," Rachel commented, but her tone carried deeper meaning. "Still remember his training?" Jessica ran her hand along Thunder's neck, feeling the power in his muscles. "Some things you don't forget, especially when you might need them again." The sound of motorcycles drew their attention. Another patrol, professional riders maintaining tactical spacing. The syndicate was establishing patterns, likely testing response times and identifying weaknesses. "They're good," Rachel observed, her military experience analyzing their methods. "But they've got one major blind spot," she nodded toward Thunder. "They don't understand what a trained warhorse can do." "How many missions did you two run together?" Jessica smiled slightly, remembering combat patrols through mountain passes, cavalry charges that had shocked insurgents who thought horses were obsolete. Enough to know that sometimes the oldest weapons are the most effective. More vehicles passed as darkness fell, teams changing shifts, maintaining constant surveillance. But they weren't the only ones watching. Every rancher in Stillwater Valley had noticed the increased activity, the subtle signs of an approaching storm. "Valley takes care of its own," Rachel reminded her, packing up her medical supplies. "When they make their move, you won't be standing alone." Jessica led Thunder back to his paddock, checking his specialized tack one more time. The syndicate thought their military training and modern technology made them invincible. They were about to learn that some traditions, like cavalry warfare, had endured for thousands of years, for very good reasons. Night fell over Stillwater Valley, but darkness brought no peace. Through her thermal scope, Jessica spotted the faint red dots of laser rangefinders sweeping her property. Professional teams mapping distances and angles. Their operation wasn't just about intimidation anymore. They were preparing for something specific. Anderson's barn erupted in flames precisely at midnight, the fire spreading with unnatural speed that suggested professional sabotage. Through her scope, Jessica identified 3 tactical teams maintaining observation positions around the burning structure. "Insurance companies already denying the claim," Rachel reported through their secure messaging app. "Same pattern as the Henderson fire in Riverside. They're moving faster now, more aggressive." Thunder's hooves were silent on the damp grass as Jessica guided him along their perimeter. The Andersons had controlled key water rights for the valley's eastern section. This wasn't random destruction, it was strategic pressure. "Got movement at the old mining entrance." Bill Reynolds's voice crackled through their emergency radio network. "Heavy equipment? Looks like they're starting major excavation, using the fire as cover while everyone's distracted." Jessica's tactical mind processed these developments. The barn fire wasn't just intimidation. It was misdirection, drawing attention while they advanced their real operation underground. Their scanner picked up encrypted communications, suggesting coordinated activities at multiple sites. The syndicate was implementing their next phase, confident that the community's response to the fire would leave other areas vulnerable. Through specialized optics, Jessica tracked thermal signatures of 3 more teams moving into position. "They're using standard tactical spacing," she noted to Thunder, "but their formation suggests they're preparing for something bigger than surveillance." Her suspicions were confirmed when the power grid failed valley-wide. Not a random outage. Jessica caught glimpses of professional teams moving in the darkness, using night vision equipment to approach key infrastructure points. "They've taken control of the main transformer station," Pete Wilson reported, through their emergency communications network. But they didn't know about Stillwater Valley's backup systems. Years of harsh winters had taught the community to prepare for independence from the main power grid. Solar arrays hidden on barn roofs, wind turbines disguised as traditional windmills. The syndicate's operation continued with military precision. Teams moved through the darkness, securing strategic positions around major ranches and key infrastructure. They thought their night vision equipment and tactical training gave them complete advantage in the darkness. They didn't realize they were being watched by someone who had spent years learning to read terrain and track movement under the most challenging conditions. Messages poured in from their growing network. The syndicate wasn't just attacking Anderson Place. Reports came of simultaneous pressure across the valley, storage facilities finding their locks mysteriously changed, delivery trucks experiencing suspicious breakdowns, banks suddenly requiring immediate loan reviews, a coordinated squeeze designed to break the community's resistance through multiple pressure points. Through her thermal scope, Jessica tracked more teams approaching critical locations. Their movement patterns suggested extensive tactical training, but also revealed their intentions to experienced eyes. "They're setting up for a valley-wide operation," she analyzed, remembering how combat operations had taught her to read subtle signs under pressure. Multiple teams, coordinated targets. This isn't just about intimidation anymore. Her assessment proved accurate as explosions illuminated the night sky. Not random destruction, but precisely targeted charges severing key irrigation lines, disrupting water supplies to specific ranches. "Got their command vehicle moving," Bill reported, heading toward the old grain elevator. "Looks like they're establishing a forward operations base." Rachel appeared on their secure video link, her military experience adding crucial insight. "They're implementing a standard tactical takeover protocol. Disable infrastructure, isolate targets, then apply focused pressure on key points." A massive explosion rocked the northern ridge, far larger than the previous charges. Through her scope, Jessica spotted teams moving with urgency toward the old mining entrances. "That wasn't them," she observed to Thunder, feeling his muscles tense beneath her. Something had gone wrong with their underground operation. Emergency frequencies crackled with encrypted communications as syndicate teams redirected toward the explosion site. Whatever had happened beneath Stillwater Valley, it hadn't been part of their planned operation. "They hit something in the old military storage facility," Bill reported, his knowledge of local history providing crucial insight. "Those tunnels aren't as stable as their surveys suggested." Jessica's tactical mind saw the opportunity in their disrupted operations. The syndicate's carefully coordinated plan was now dealing with an unexpected crisis, forcing them to reveal capabilities they'd meant to keep hidden. Through her scope, she tracked specialized teams emerging from concealed positions. Explosive ordnance disposal units, hazmat crews, equipment she wouldn't expect from a simple criminal organization. "They're not just setting up a distribution hub," Rachel concluded, watching the response through surveillance feeds. "Whatever they're planning to move through those tunnels requires military-grade containment." The night air filled with more tactical chatter as syndicate teams coordinated their response. Jessica noted how their professional discipline wavered, revealing hints of genuine concern in their communications. "Got their leadership arriving," Bill reported. "Multiple vehicles, heavy security. Something about this situation has them spooked." Jessica watched through her scope as expensive SUVs converged on the explosion site. The syndicate's commanders were taking direct control, suggesting this crisis threatened something crucial to their larger operation. Her combat experience had taught her that sometimes the most important moments came not from perfect execution, but from recognizing when an opponent's plans began to unravel. The Andersons' barn continued to burn, but its tactical significance had shifted. What started as a coordinated operation to break Stillwater Valley's resistance had transformed into something else. A revelation of vulnerabilities in the syndicates. A careful planning. Through their kitchen window, Jessica tracked more teams moving with urgent purpose through the darkness. They thought their night vision equipment and tactical training made them invisible. They didn't realize they were being observed by someone who understood that sometimes the most crucial intelligence comes from watching how opponents react when their plans go wrong. Thunder's ears pricked forward, catching sounds too faint for human hearing. Jessica had learned to trust his instincts during combat operations. The warhorse's senses had saved their lives more than once. Multiple teams converging on the North Ridge, she reported through their secure channel. They're implementing some kind of emergency protocol. Whatever they hit down there has them running scared. Rachel's voice crackled through their radio. My contact at Fort Harrison just confirmed. Those tunnels were part of an old military storage network. Cold War era, completely off official records. The syndicate might have just breached something they weren't supposed to find. Jessica guided Thunder to higher ground, using his elevated position to survey the valley. The syndicate's operation showed signs of fracturing, teams breaking standard protocols, communications becoming erratic, leadership making rushed decisions. They're pulling back from secondary positions, Bill observed, concentrating forces around the tunnel entrance. Standard containment protocol. Whatever's down there, they're more worried about keeping it in than keeping us out. Through her thermal scope, Jessica tracked more specialized teams deploying around the breach site. Their equipment and procedures suggested connections to official organizations that shouldn't be involved with criminal operations. Got movement at their other locations, Pete reported. They're implementing some kind of emergency shutdown, securing equipment, moving materials. These aren't criminal protocols, they're military containment procedures. The night deepened over Stillwater Valley as Jessica processed these developments. The syndicate had launched their operation with professional precision, confident. Their superior resources and tactical expertise guaranteed victory. Now they were about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous opponents are the ones who know how to recognize opportunity in chaos. Mark Thompson, the local fire chief, with 20 years of military engineering experience, arrived at their property, his face grim in the emergency lights. Found something you need to see, he said, spreading satellite thermal imaging across Jessica's kitchen table. Those explosions weren't just from hitting unstable tunnels. Look at these heat signatures. Jessica studied the images, her combat. Experience recognizing patterns. Those are containment protocols, she noted. Military-grade emergency responses. Exactly, Mark confirmed. And here's the thing. Those readings match classified storage facilities, the kind used for materials that officially don't exist. My old unit specialized in securing these types of sites. Through their window, they watched more specialized teams deploy around the tunnel entrance. Their equipment went far beyond what any criminal organization should have access to. Got their communication frequencies mapped, Pete reported through their secure channel. They're using encryption protocols I haven't seen since my days with Special Forces. Whatever's down there, it's classified at the highest levels. Rachel's voice added to the tactical assessment. Just intercepted partial transmissions. They keep referencing Project Avalanche and Level 4 containment. These aren't criminal codes. They're military project designations. Thunder's hooves struck the ground with practiced silence as Jessica guided him to a better vantage point. Years of combat operations had taught them both how to move undetected, even in full tactical gear. Their response teams are interesting, Mark observed, analyzing their deployment patterns. Those aren't just private contractors. See how they move? That's specialized military training, the kind you only get in very specific units. Jessica watched a new team emerge from the darkness, their equipment suggesting connections to organizations that shouldn't be operating on US soil. They're not just worried about structural collapse, she noted. Those are NBC protocols, nuclear, biological, chemical containment procedures. Makes sense, Rachel added through their link. Just got word from my Fort Harrison contact. During the Cold War, these tunnels were part of something called Operation Deep Store. Everything else about it is still classified. The night air crackled with more encrypted communications as syndicate teams coordinated their crisis response. Jessica noted how their professional discipline continued to crack, revealing glimpses of genuine fear in their operations. Their perimeter is collapsing, Bill reported. Teams breaking formation, abandoning standard security protocols. Whatever they find down there has them spooked bad. Through her thermal scope, Jessica tracked more government-grade vehicles arriving. Each new element revealed another aspect of their true operation, a sophisticated plan hiding something far more dangerous than simple criminal enterprise. Found their facility blueprints, Mark announced, his engineering background proving crucial. These aren't just storage tunnels. They're connected to an entire network of classified installations. The syndicate didn't just stumble onto abandoned mines. They found a Cold War military complex that was never supposed to be discovered. Thunder's ears swiveled, tracking movement that revealed more teams arriving with specialized containment equipment. The syndicate's operation had multiple layers, each crisis revealing deeper connections to official powers that shouldn't be involved with criminal enterprises. Their emergency protocols just shifted, Pete warned. They're implementing something called blackout procedures. Total communications shutdown, complete site lockdown. Jessica felt thunder tense beneath her, the warhorse's combat instincts alerting her to new movement patterns in the darkness. The syndicate had created something sophisticated, layers of deception hiding classified operations from official oversight. But they'd made one crucial miscalculation. They thought their sophisticated planning and government connections guaranteed success against simple ranch owners. They were about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous opponents are the ones who understand that chaos creates opportunity and know exactly how to exploit it. Dawn painted Stillwater Valley in shades of gray as emergency vehicles converged on the underground facility. Through her thermal scope, Jessica tracked multiple teams deploying around the breach site. Hazmat units, specialized containment crews, and what looked suspiciously like government agencies operating without official markings. Got a match. On one of their response teams, Mark reported through their secure channel. They're using equipment exclusive to DARPA research projects. This isn't just about criminal enterprise anymore. A sleek helicopter touched down near the operations center, its unmarked exterior suggesting high-level government connections. The man who emerged moved with the distinctive bearing of senior military command. Colonel James Hawthorne, Rachel, identified through their video feed. Former Special Projects Division, officially retired 3 years ago, but his name keeps appearing in connection with classified research programs. Jessica guided Thunder along the ridgeline, using his elevated position to observe the operation below. Her combat experience translated each movement into tactical intelligence. The syndicate's teams weren't just containing a breach, they were securing evidence. Their technical data is interesting, Bill added, having managed to intercept partial transmissions. They're not just building distribution facilities. These are research and development installations, military-grade laboratories hidden under agricultural cover. Through her thermal scope, Jessica watched more specialized equipment being moved into the underground facility. The syndicate's operation had multiple layers, each crisis revealing deeper connections to official powers that shouldn't be involved with criminal enterprises. Found something concerning, Mark reported, his engineering expertise analyzing structural data. Those old tunnels don't just connect to other valleys. According to these classified maps, they link up with an abandoned research facility from the Cold War, completely off official records. Thunder's ears pricked forward, catching movement before Jessica spotted it. Through the morning mist, they watched teams of specialists deploying around the valley perimeter, their equipment suggesting capabilities far beyond normal security operations. "They're setting up a containment zone," Rachel observed through their secure link. "Same protocols were used in restricted research facilities. Whatever's down there, they're terrified of it getting out." The morning air crackled with encrypted communications as more response teams arrived. Jessica noted how their protocols shifted between criminal organization and official operation, a sophisticated blend designed to maintain deniability. "Colonel Hawthorne's background is interesting," Pete reported. Before his retirement, he ran classified research programs, developing experimental compounds, projects that officially don't exist. Jessica's tactical mind saw the larger pattern. Stillwater Valley hadn't been chosen randomly. Its isolated location, agricultural cover, and underground infrastructure made it perfect for hiding classified research operations. "Got their facility blueprints," Mark announced. "These aren't just labs. They're creating a self-contained research and production network, using the old mining tunnels to connect everything underground while maintaining legitimate agricultural operations as cover." Through her scope, Jessica watched Hawthorne coordinate with more specialized teams. His presence confirmed what the evidence suggested. The syndicate was just the visible face of something much larger. Their security patterns make more sense. Now, Pete observed, they're not just protecting criminal operations. They're implementing protocols designed to hide government-level projects from official oversight. Rachel's veterinary knowledge provided another tactical insight. Those containment procedures they're using, they're meant for handling experimental biological agents. The kind of precautions you take when dealing with substances that could have widespread effects. Thunder moved with silent precision as Jessica guided him to a new observation point. The stallion's combat training showed in every step. Years of battlefield experience had taught him how to approach without being detected. "Found more in their files," Bill reported urgently. "References to Phase 2 sites. They're targeting other agricultural communities across the country. Stillwater Valley isn't just a test site, it's a prototype." Through her thermal scope, Jessica watched Colonel Hawthorne take a secured call, his body language suggesting growing concern. More specialized teams rushed toward the underground facility, their equipment revealing capabilities that shouldn't exist outside classified programs. "Got their personnel files," Rachel added through their secure link. "The research teams they're bringing in, they're all former military scientists, specialists in chemical enhancement and biological augmentation. People who officially retired from government work." Mark's voice carried tension as he analyzed intercepted technical data. "These facility specifications, they're designing something that could process massive quantities of experimental compounds, infrastructure that could affect entire populations if misused." Jessica felt thunder shift beneath her, the warhorse, sensing the growing tension. The syndicate's operation wasn't just about hiding illegal research. They were developing something that could fundamentally change the landscape of power. "Their security protocols just shifted again," Pete reported. "They're implementing countdown procedures. Whatever they're working on down there, it's reaching some kind of critical phase." Through her scope, Jessica tracked more specialized teams deploying around the valley. Each unit revealed another layer of the operation. Equipment designed for handling experimental compounds, containment protocols for managing test subjects. "Found their subject lists," Sarah announced grimly. "They're planning human trials, using isolated rural communities as testing grounds. where unusual effects wouldn't draw attention. Rachel appeared on their secure video link, her medical knowledge providing crucial insight. The chemical markers in their formulas, they're similar to experimental performance enhancers developed for military operations. But these are more advanced, more aggressive. Jessica's tactical mind saw the larger strategy. Stillwater Valley's isolated location and agricultural cover wouldn't just hide their research, it would provide perfect conditions for testing their compounds without official oversight. Colonel Hawthorne's making more calls, Bill reported. Bringing in additional containment teams. Whatever they're developing down there, it's already progressing further than they planned. Through her thermal scope, Jessica watched more government-grade equipment arrive. The syndicate had created something sophisticated, a classified research operation hidden behind layers of criminal enterprise and legitimate agriculture. But they'd made one crucial miscalculation. They thought their official connections and sophisticated planning guaranteed their secrecy. They didn't realize they were dealing with people who had spent lifetimes learning to see what others tried to hide, in weather patterns, in animal behavior, in human nature. Multiple breaches detected. Mark's voice carried urgency through their secure channel. The explosion compromised 3 different containment sectors. Their backup systems are failing. Colonel Hawthorne's voice cut through the morning air as he coordinated with his teams, the military precision in his commands betraying years of classified operations. Secure Level 4 immediately. Nothing leaves the primary containment zone. Jessica guided Thunder to a higher vantage point, using natural cover to observe the increasing activity below. Through her scope, she watched specialized teams rushing between security checkpoints, their movements showing growing desperation. Got their internal communications, Pete reported. They're implementing something called Protocol Omega. Full containment, complete information blackout, these are endgame procedures. Dr. James Carter, the local high school chemistry teacher with a hidden past in military research, joined their network. Those chemical signatures they're trying to contain, I've seen them before, back when I worked on classified enhancement programs. But these are different, more unstable. Thunder's ears swiveled, tracking multiple approach vectors as more government vehicles arrived. Jessica noted how each new team revealed another layer of their operation: mobile laboratories, containment units, specialized communication gear. The tunnel network is more extensive than they realized, Mark added, analyzing structural data. These aren't just storage facilities. According to these old files, they connect to an entire grid of Cold War research sites. The syndicate didn't just find one facility. They've exposed an entire hidden network. Rachel's voice carried tension through their secure link. My contact at Fort Harrison just confirmed these aren't standard research protocols. They're dealing with experimental compounds designed for mass deployment through agricultural systems, using farms as unwitting distribution points. Through her thermal scope, Jessica tracked more teams establishing containment perimeters. Each new security ring revealed sophisticated equipment that shouldn't exist outside classified military programs. Found their project timeline. Bill reported. They're not just researching here, they're preparing for production. Once they perfect their formula, they plan to replicate this setup across multiple agricultural regions. Thunder shifted beneath Jessica, his combat instincts alerting her to changes in the enemy's movement patterns. The syndicate's teams were implementing new security protocols, but their formation suggested growing uncertainty. Their containment procedures are interesting, Dr. Carter observed, analyzing intercepted data. They're not just worried about the compounds escaping, they're terrified of anyone discovering their true nature. These aren't normal research precautions. They're trying to hide something that could change everything. Jessica watched Colonel Hawthorne coordinate another emergency response, his command style revealing years of experience managing classified crises. But this situation was quickly moving beyond even his control. Multiple teams converging on Sector 7, Pete warned. That's where they stored their primary research data. They're implementing emergency destruction protocols. The morning sun cast long shadows across Stillwater Valley as Jessica processed these developments. The syndicate had created something far more dangerous than a hidden research facility. They were establishing a network that could bypass normal safety protocols and regulatory oversight. Their distribution plans are sophisticated, Mark reported, analyzing recovered documents. Using legitimate agricultural shipments as cover, they could spread their compounds across entire regions without detection. Through her scope, Jessica watched more specialized teams secure the facility. The syndicate's operation showed planning that went far beyond criminal enterprise. They were creating infrastructure for unauthorized human experimentation on a massive scale. Got their research objectives, Rachel reported through their secure link. They're not just developing performance enhancers, they're creating compounds that can influence human behavior, testing methods to control populations through modified food supplies. Thunder's combat training showed in his perfectly controlled stance as Jessica surveyed the valley. The syndicate had brought impressive resources to Stillwater Valley, confident their superior planning guaranteed victory. They were about to discover that sometimes the most dangerous opponents are the ones who understand that chaos creates opportunity and know exactly how to exploit it. The morning sun climbed higher as Jessica led Thunder back to their barn, away from prying eyes. Behind its weathered exterior, the structure held secrets that would have shocked the syndicate's surveillance teams. "Time to show you something," she told Mark and Rachel, who had arrived under the pretense of checking their generator. Moving to the back wall, she activated a hidden mechanism. Reinforced panels slid aside, revealing a sophisticated command center. "Most of this came with us from Afghanistan," Jessica explained, gesturing to the military-grade communications equipment and tactical displays. "The army wasn't just using horses for ceremonial purposes over there. We were developing modern cavalry tactics for mountain warfare." Rachel studied the specialized gear with professional appreciation. Modified tactical saddles, advanced communication, systems integrated into traditional tack, equipment that could turn a well-trained horse into a formidable modern combat platform. "Thomas helped set this up," Jessica continued, referring to her late husband. "He understood that sometimes the oldest military traditions could be adapted for modern warfare. Everything here is designed to combine classical cavalry tactics with current technology." Mark examined the tactical displays, showing real-time surveillance of their property. "You've been preparing for something like this all along," he observed. "Not specifically this," Jessica corrected, checking Thunder's specialized combat tack. "But working with military horses taught me to always maintain operational readiness. Some habits you don't lose, even in peaceful times." Through their monitoring systems, they watched syndicate teams continuing their containment operations around the breached facility. Each movement revealed more about their capabilities and their vulnerabilities. Their tactical approach is modern, Jessica analyzed, but they're forgetting something crucial about this terrain. Horses can go places their vehicles can't, move silently where their teams would be detected, approach from angles their surveillance won't expect. Rachel examined Thunder's specialized gear. "Combat horseshoes," she noted, "designed for silent movement over any terrain. And these saddle modifications, they're for carrying tactical equipment while maintaining full mobility." "We developed these systems for special operations," Jessica confirmed. "Most people think cavalry warfare is obsolete. That assumption gives us an advantage. No one expects a horse to be part of a modern tactical response." Mark studied the topographical displays. "You've mapped every approach to their facility," he observed, "including routes their vehicles can't access. Horses were the original all-terrain vehicles, Jessica reminded them. Thunder and I spent years perfecting these techniques in combat zones. Mountain passes, desert terrain, urban environments. A well-trained warhorse can adapt to any battlefield. Their tactical planning was interrupted by movement on the surveillance feeds. New syndicate teams were deploying, their formation suggesting preparation for a major operation. They're establishing a full security cordon, Mark noted. Standard military protocol for containing sensitive sites. Jessica activated additional monitoring systems, revealing thermal imaging of the underground facility. They think their technology gives them complete coverage, she observed. They haven't considered that some of their blind spots are exactly where traditional cavalry tactics would exploit. Rachel examined more of their specialized equipment. These communication systems, she noted, they're designed to maintain contact without relying on standard channels. Even if they shut down, normal frequencies will still have capabilities they won't expect, Jessica confirmed. Thunder's trained to respond to silent commands, operate without electronic communications if needed. In combat zones, we learned that sometimes the oldest methods are the most reliable. Through their surveillance feeds, they watched Colonel Hawthorne coordinating more containment teams. His tactics were sophisticated, but they revealed assumptions about modern warfare that Jessica could exploit. They're focusing on vehicular approaches, she noted, establishing checkpoints where roads and trails intersect. But look at these terrain features. She indicated areas on their tactical display. A horse can move through here without being detected, approaching from angles their security isn't designed to cover. Mark studied the patterns. They're using standard military doctrine for securing sensitive sites, but those protocols were developed for modern warfare. They don't account for cavalry tactics. Exactly, Jessica agreed, checking Thunder's combat gear one final time. In Afghanistan, we proved that combining traditional horse warfare with modern technology created capabilities that enemies weren't prepared to counter. The syndicates about to learn the same lesson. Rachel examined their medical supplies, noting how they combined modern combat medicine with traditional veterinary care. You've prepared for extended operations, she observed. Self-sufficient medical support, independent of normal supply chains. Standard protocol for cavalry operations in remote areas, Jessica confirmed. Thunder and I spent years perfecting these techniques. Being able to operate independently of normal support systems is crucial when conventional tactics aren't an option. Their planning session was interrupted by new movement on their surveillance feeds. The syndicate was deploying additional teams, their formation suggesting preparation for aggressive action. They're getting ready to move, Mark observed. Probably planning to secure the entire valley now that their facility's been compromised. Jessica checked their tactical readiness one final time. Years of combat experience had taught her the importance of thorough preparation. Every piece of equipment was chosen for specific capabilities, every system designed to operate independently. If needed, they think their modern technology and military training make them invincible, she noted, watching more teams deploy through their surveillance feeds. They're about to learn what cavalry commanders have known for centuries. Sometimes the most effective weapons are the ones your enemy doesn't expect you to have. Thunder stood perfectly still as Jessica adjusted his tactical gear. His combat training evident in every controlled movement. Years of battlefield experience had taught them both how to prepare for unconventional warfare. Most people see a horse and think it's outdated technology, she explained to her allies. They don't realize that cavalry warfare evolved over thousands of years, specifically to exploit weaknesses in conventional military thinking. Every piece of equipment here is designed to turn those ancient tactics into modern advantages. Through their monitoring systems, they watch the syndicate establishing more security checkpoints. Each new position revealed sophisticated capabilities. and critical blind spots that traditional cavalry tactics could exploit. Their security is focusing on standard threats, Mark noted. Vehicles, foot patrols, electronic surveillance. They're not prepared for an opponent who can move like a ghost through their perimeter. Rachel examined their tactical medical supplies. These protocols combine modern combat medicine with traditional horse warfare, she observed. You can treat injuries, maintain operational capability without relying on normal medical support. Essential for cavalry operations in hostile territory, Jessica confirmed. In Afghanistan, we often had to function independently for extended periods. Every system here is designed for self-sufficient operation. Their tactical displays showed more syndicate teams moving into position. The operation was sophisticated, but it revealed assumptions about modern warfare that Jessica could turn against them. They're establishing textbook security protocols, she noted. But textbooks don't teach you how to counter centuries-old tactics that have been updated for modern combat. Everything they're doing is based on the assumption that they know all possible threats. Thunder's ears pricked forward, alerting them to movement before their surveillance systems detected it. New teams were approaching, their formation suggesting final preparation for major action. Time to show them what a warhorse can really do, Jessica said quietly, feeling the same focused calm that had served them well in combat zones. The syndicate had brought impressive resources to Stillwater Valley, confident their modern technology would guaranteed victory. They were about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous opponents are the ones who understand that ancient warfare can be adapted for modern battles. There's more, Jessica continued, activating another hidden panel. Inside, specialized combat gear gleamed under tactical lighting, advanced body armor designed specifically for cavalry operations. Lightweight, but capable of stopping modern ammunition. We tested these systems extensively in combat zones. Dr. Carter examined the equipment with professional interest. These composites, he noted, they're military prototype materials. How did you... Thomas's last project, Jessica explained, running her hand along Thunder's customized armor. He was developing next-generation protection systems for cavalry operations. Every piece is designed to enhance traditional horse warfare, while countering modern weapons. Through their surveillance feeds, they watch syndicate teams establishing new security positions. Each placement revealed sophisticated tactical thinking and critical vulnerabilities to cavalry warfare. Look at their patrol patterns, Mark observed, studying the tactical displays. They're maintaining standard intervals for modern infantry operations. But those are the same intervals. Create perfect corridors for cavalry movement, Jessica finished. In Afghanistan, we exploited similar patterns. Modern military doctrine isn't designed to counter horse-mounted operators. Rachel examined their medical supplies more closely. These aren't just standard veterinary medicines, she noted. You've got combat trauma kits, specialized treatments for both horse and rider, everything needed for extended operations without support. We learned the hard way in the mountains, Jessica confirmed. Modern cavalry has to be completely self-sufficient. Every system here is designed to function independently of normal support structures. Their tactical planning was interrupted by new alerts from their surveillance network. The syndicate was moving specialized equipment into position around the valley perimeter. Night vision arrays, motion sensors, thermal imaging, Mark listed, watching the deployment. Standard modern security technology, all designed to detect expected threats, Jessica noted, checking Thunder's specialized sensors. But their systems are calibrated for human operators, vehicles, and modern tactical movement. They don't register horse and rider moving in traditional cavalry patterns. Dr. Carter studied their communication setup. These frequencies, he observed, they're outside normal tactical bands. Even if they shut down standard communications, we'll maintain command and control capabilities. Jessica confirmed. Every piece of equipment here is designed to operate on independent systems, lessons learned from years of unconventional warfare. Through their monitors, they watched Colonel Hawthorne implementing more security protocols. His operation was professional, but it revealed assumptions about modern combat that Jessica could exploit. They're establishing kill zones, Mark noted, analyzing the tactical positions, standard military doctrine for securing sensitive sites. Based entirely on modern warfare concepts, Jessica added, indicating their tactical display. See these approaches. Traditional cavalry tactics were developed specifically to exploit these kinds of defensive positions. Everything they're doing assumes they know all possible threats. Thunder shifted slightly, his combat training responding to subtle changes in atmosphere. Years of battlefield experience had taught them both to read situations, to sense when action was imminent. Most people think cavalry warfare is obsolete because they imagine historical battles, Jessica explained, checking their tactical readiness. They don't realize that horse warfare evolved over centuries specifically to counter conventional military thinking. Every system here is designed to adapt those proven tactics for modern combat. Rachel examined their tactical medical gear one final time. These protocols, she observed, combine modern emergency medicine with traditional cavalry field care. You can maintain operational capability even under extreme conditions. Essential for unconventional warfare, Jessica confirmed. In combat zones, we often had to operate without normal support systems. Everything here is designed for independent action under any conditions. Through their surveillance network, they watched more syndicate teams moving into final positions. The operation showed sophisticated planning, but it revealed critical assumptions about modern warfare. Their security is textbook perfect, Mark noted, studying their deployment patterns. If they were facing conventional threats, that's their weakness, Jessica agreed, feeling Thunder's muscles tense beneath her hand. They've forgotten that cavalry warfare was developed specifically to exploit conventional military thinking. Everything they're doing is based on modern combat doctrine that never considered facing an opponent combining ancient tactics with current technology. The morning brought new developments as Jessica's network of allies reported unusual activity throughout Stillwater Valley. Bill called from the feed store, his voice tense. They're buying up specific supplies, he reported. Industrial fencing, concrete mix, heavy-duty locks. Same pattern as Riverside County before they started securing properties for safety violations. Through their surveillance feeds, Jessica tracked more vehicles converging on the syndicate's staging area. Their tactical deployment had shifted. They were establishing a more permanent presence, setting up long-term surveillance positions. Got something you need to see, Rachel texted, followed by drone footage showing construction at multiple sites across the valley. They're not just taking property, they're fortifying positions. Mark studied the footage with the combat engineer's eye. Those aren't agricultural installations. They're building some kind of secure compound system. Military-grade fortifications disguised as farm structures. Jessica's tactical mind saw the pattern. The syndicate wasn't just trying to take their ranch, they were transforming the entire valley into some kind of operational base. The old mining tunnels would connect everything underground, while their fake agricultural facilities provided cover above. Their scanner picked up fragments of encrypted communications, enough to confirm her suspicions. The syndicate was coordinating with teams outside the valley, part of a larger operation spanning multiple states. Tyler Anderson, Sarah's grandson home from college where he studied geological engineering, arrived with disturbing news. The young man's face showed worry as he handed them a stack of surveys. Those mining tunnels they're so interested in, he explained. They don't just connect to other valleys. According to these old maps, they link up with abandoned military storage facilities from the Cold War, completely off official records. Jessica processed this information while watching more syndicate teams establish positions around their property. This wasn't just about property acquisition or criminal enterprise. They were building something bigger, something that required serious infrastructure. Just intercepted their supply manifests, Pete reported through their secure channel. They're bringing in military-grade security systems, thermal imaging, and seismic sensors. Whatever they're planning, it's professional-level operations. Through their command center monitors, Jessica spotted more teams moving through their terrain. Their deployment pattern had changed, no longer just surveillance. They were mapping detailed tactical approaches, preparing for something specific. And they've started pressuring the county water board, Mark reported, reading messages from their network, trying to force new regulations that would give them control over irrigation rights. Thunder shifted beneath Jessica as she analyzed the aid syndicate's strategy. They were implementing a sophisticated plan combining legal pressure, tactical operations, and infrastructure development. Most people would be overwhelmed by the complexity, but Jessica Mitchell hadn't spent years in combat. Zones just to run a retirement sanctuary. I've got eyes on the central facility, Bill reported. Colonel Hawthorne is personally coordinating operations, but they've lost contact with half their containment teams. Something down there is disrupting their communications. Keep them distracted, Jessica urged. Let's make sure they think they can still contain this. They need to believe they're in control. Through their tactical displays, they watched new syndicate teams mobilize, their vehicles streaking through the valley toward vulnerable points in their network. But they didn't know that every move they made now was being catalogued, analyzed, and incorporated into Jessica's developing strategy. Their central servers are compromised, Dr. Carter reported, almost amused. They're operating on old data, and their field agents are getting conflicting orders. The breach is forcing them to make mistakes. Sarah's voice came through, calm, but intense. First containment team is showing signs of exposure. Second team was diverted into quarantine. The syndicate can't trace this back. They've lost control of their primary research sector. The tension that had built in Jessica's chest loosened slightly. The operation was reaching a critical point. The syndicate's ability to maintain security was key to their operation. Without it, their entire network would be vulnerable. This is the tipping point, Dr. Carter added. If they don't cut their losses and pull back soon, they'll expose everything they've been trying to hide. Jessica's eyes moved to the horizon as she processed the coming steps. The syndicate had reached the moment where their failure was becoming inevitable. They had underestimated the local network, underestimated the people of Stillwater Valley, and most of all, underestimated what a warhorse and his rider could do. Through their monitoring systems, they watched Colonel Hawthorne implement new security protocols, but his command style suggested growing desperation. The syndicate's sophisticated operation was crumbling under mounting pressure. Got movement at the old Miller place. Tyler's voice crackled through their radio network. Heavy equipment coming in. Looks like they're starting major construction. Mark analyzed the incoming data. They're not just building security posts. These are permanent installations, research facilities, processing centers, long-term infrastructure disguised as agricultural operations. Rachel's veterinary expertise provided crucial insight. Those containment procedures they're using, they're designed for handling experimental biological agents, the kind of precautions you take when dealing with substances that could affect entire populations. Jessica watched Colonel Hawthorne coordinate another emergency response, his command style revealing years of experience managing classified crises. But this situation was quickly moving beyond even his control. Multiple teams converging on sector. Zevon, Pete warned, that's where they stored their prototype formulas. They're implementing emergency destruction protocols. Through their surveillance network, they caught fragments of encrypted radio traffic. Sir, containment breach in Section D, a voice crackled. Exposure readings off the scale. We need immediate evac. The transmission cut off abruptly. Their research staff is showing symptoms, Rachel reported grimly. Whatever they're working with down there, it's not behaving according to their models. Standard containment protocols aren't working. Doctor, Carter analyzed the incoming data with growing concern. These molecular structures, they're designed to bond with agricultural products. Once released into the food supply, they'd be nearly impossible to detect or remove. Got their distribution maps, Mark added. They're not just targeting Stillwater Valley. They've identified agricultural centers across 12 states. This is just the testing ground for something much bigger. Through their thermal imaging, Jessica tracked more hazmat teams deploying around the facility perimeter. Each new containment unit revealed increasingly sophisticated equipment and growing desperation in their procedures. Found something. In their personnel files, Tyler reported, the research team leaders, they're all connected to something called Project Shepherd, highly classified military program from the early 2000s. All records officially destroyed. Thunder's ears pricked forward, catching movement before their sensors detected it. Through the morning haze, they watched teams of specialists emerging from the facility, their protective gear suggesting exposure to something far more dangerous than standard chemicals. Their emergency protocols just shifted, Pete observed. They're not just containing a breach anymore. They're preparing for complete site abandonment. Something down there has them truly scared. Colonel Hawthorne's voice cut through their surveillance feeds again, tension evident even through the encryption. Initiate scorched earth procedures. Nothing leaves this valley. Nothing. Those protocols, Dr. Carter's voice carried a genuine alarm. Scorched earth means they'll destroy everything. Research, facilities, evidence. They'll sterilize the entire site rather than risk exposure. Rachel's medical training provided crucial context. The symptoms their teams are showing, they match experimental enhancement programs I saw overseas, but these are more aggressive, more unpredictable. Through their command center displays, Jessica watched more government vehicles arrive. Not just containment units now, but specialized demolition teams. The syndicate was preparing to erase all traces of their operation, found their contingency plans, Mark reported. They're not just planning to destroy the facility. They've got protocols for neutralizing entire communities if their research is exposed. They'll sacrifice everything to keep their secrets. Thunder shifted beneath Jessica, his combat instincts responding to the changing tactical situation. Years of battlefield experience had taught them both to recognize when operations reached critical turning points. Multiple teams moving to high ground, Bill warned. They're establishing containment perimeter alpha. That's maximum isolation protocol. Nothing gets in or out. Jessica processed these developments with the same focused calm that had served them in combat zones. The syndicate had created something they couldn't control, and now they were ready to destroy an entire valley to keep it hidden. Their research. Data's fascinating, Dr. Carter added, analyzing intercepted files. They're not just developing chemical agents. They're creating compounds that can alter human behavior through everyday food sources, strategic population control through agricultural distribution. Through their surveillance systems, they watched Colonel Hawthorne coordinate with new teams arriving in unmarked helicopters. Each unit carried equipment that suggested connections to agencies that officially didn't exist. Got their final containment procedures, Pete reported. They're not planning to just quarantine the valley. They're preparing to implement something called Protocol Omega, complete information blackout followed by environmental sterilization. Thunder's combat training showed in his perfectly controlled stance as Jessica surveyed the increasing activity. The syndicate had brought impressive resources to Stillwater Valley, confident their superior planning guaranteed success. They were about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous opponents are the ones who understand that desperate enemies make predictable mistakes. Dawn's early light revealed new movements across Stillwater Valley as Jessica and Thunder maintained Their covert observation post. Through their enhanced surveillance systems, they watched specialized teams emerging from the underground facility, their equipment suggesting capabilities far beyond normal military operations. Got something interesting. In their communications, Pete reported through their secure channel. They keep referencing something called Project Echo, cross-referenced it with my old military contacts. It was a classified program studying long-term behavioral modification through environmental exposure. Jessica guided Thunder along the ridgeline, using natural cover to avoid the Syndicate's detection systems. Below them, more unmarked vehicles arrived, each carrying equipment that shouldn't exist outside government black sites. Their research goes deeper than we thought, Dr. Carter added, analyzing intercepted data. These aren't just enhancement compounds. They're developing substances that can alter human behavior patterns through repeated low-level exposure. Perfect for distribution through agricultural products, Mark's engineering expertise provided crucial context. The facility network makes more sense now. These aren't just storage tunnels. They're designed for long-term production and distribution. Once established, they could contaminate food supplies across entire regions. Through their tactical displays, they watched Colonel Hawthorne coordinating with new teams arriving by helicopter. Each unit carried specialized containment gear, suggesting they were prepared for exposure to extremely dangerous materials. Found their personnel roster, Rachel reported. The scientific team includes specialists in neurochemistry, behavioral psychology, and agricultural distribution. They're building something designed to affect population-level behavior patterns. Thunder's ears swiveled, tracking movement their sensors hadn't detected yet. Jessica watched through enhanced optics as teams of specialists deployed around the facility perimeter, their protective gear suggesting contact with substances requiring extreme containment protocols. Their security patterns are shifting, Bill observed. They're not just containing a breach anymore, they're preparing for something bigger, looking like full-site sterilization procedures. Tyler's geological expertise revealed another layer of concern. These tunnel systems, they're connected to underground water sources that feed agricultural regions in 3 states, perfect for wide-scale distribution of chemical agents. Through their command center monitors, Jessica tracked more government vehicles arriving. Each new team revealed sophisticated equipment that suggested connections to classified research programs. Got their project timeline, Pete reported. This facility was supposed to be their proof of concept. Once operational, they plan to establish similar sites in agricultural communities across the country, creating a network that could affect entire populations without detection. Dr. Carter analyzed more intercepted data. These formulas, they're designed to accumulate in human systems over time. Effects would be gradual, nearly impossible to trace back to their source. Perfect for long-term behavioral modification. Jessica felt thunder tense beneath her as they watched new teams establishing security positions. The Syndicate's operation had multiple layers, each revelation showing a deeper threat to not just Stillwater Valley, but to agricultural communities nationwide. Their containment protocols are interesting, Mark noted. They're not just worried about immediate exposure. These are designed to prevent detection of long-term effects. They're hiding something that could have generational impacts. Through their surveillance network, they intercepted more encrypted communications. Colonel Hawthorne's voice carried tension as he coordinated emergency responses. Containment breach, spreading to Sector 9. Implement Protocol Omega immediately. No witnesses. Those protocols, Rachel's voice revealed deep concern. They're not just planning to destroy evidence. They're preparing to eliminate any possibility of their research being exposed, including civilian populations. Jessica guided Thunder to a new observation point, using terrain features to avoid detection. Years of combat experience had taught them both how to gather intelligence while remaining invisible to enemy surveillance. Found their distribution plans? Bill reported. They're not just using normal agricultural shipping, they've established a network of shell companies, fake inspection agencies, and fraudulent certification systems. Everything needed to move. Contaminated products without detection. Dr. Carter's analysis revealed more disturbing details. These compounds, they're designed to interact with common agricultural chemicals. Once combined with normal fertilizers and pesticides, they'd be nearly impossible to identify or remove from the food supply. Through their thermal imaging, Jessica watched specialized teams setting up what appeared to be demolition charges around key facility access points. The syndicate was preparing to erase all evidence of their operation. Got their command structure. Mapped, Pete added. Colonel Hawthorne isn't just running this facility. He's coordinating similar operations at multiple sites across the country, building a network that could bypass all normal safety protocols and regulatory oversight. Thunder's combat training showed in his perfectly controlled movements as they gathered more intelligence. Each new piece of information revealed a threat far greater than simple criminal enterprise. Their research objectives are terrifying, Rachel reported. They're not just developing ways to control behavior, they're creating compounds that could fundamentally alter human response patterns, testing methods to influence entire populations through modified food supplies. Mark's analysis of facility blueprints revealed another concern. These installations, they're designed for rapid evacuation and complete destruction. They can eliminate all evidence of their operation within hours, leaving no trace of what they were really doing. Through their command center displays, Jessica watched more specialized teams deploy around the valley. Each unit revealed another layer of the syndicate's true capabilities and their willingness to sacrifice anything to keep their secrets. Found their contingency plans, Tyler reported grimly. They've got protocols for neutralizing entire communities if their research is exposed. They'll destroy everything rather than risk their true purpose being discovered. Jessica processed these developments with combat-honed precision. The syndicate had created something far more dangerous than a hidden research facility. They were establishing infrastructure for unauthorized human experimentation on a massive scale. Their security protocols just shifted again, Pete warned. They're implementing something called blackout procedures. Total communications shutdown, complete site lockdown. Whatever they're hiding down there, they're terrified of it being exposed. Through their surveillance feeds, they watched Colonel Hawthorne coordinate with more specialized teams. His presence connected multiple pieces of the puzzle, the military-grade equipment, the classified protocols, the sophisticated research facilities. Got their project files, Bill announced urgently. They're calling it Operation Harvest, using agricultural communities as cover for developing some kind of enhanced pharmaceutical compound, something that shouldn't exist outside military labs. Jessica felt thunder shift beneath her as they processed these revelations. The syndicate wasn't just a criminal organization trying to take over farming communities. They were front for something much larger, a classified operation using rural areas to hide development of substances that official agencies wouldn't want traced back to them. Their containment teams are spreading out, Rachel reported through their secure channel, setting up monitoring stations around the valley perimeter. They're worried about exposure, not just of materials, but of information. Through their thermal scope, Jessica tracked more specialized units deploying around Stillwater Valley. Each team revealed another layer of official connection, equipment that shouldn't exist outside government agencies, protocols that suggested military oversight. Found more project details, Dr. Carter added through their secure channel. They're developing something that combines pharmaceutical compounds with classified chemical agents, creating something new, something that bypasses normal regulatory oversight. Thunder's battlefield instincts alerted Jessica to movement before their sensors detected it. Through the morning haze, they watched teams of specialists deploying new equipment around the facility perimeter. That's DARPA-level technology, Mark observed. Experimental detection systems, advanced containment units, equipment that's still in the prototype phase, shouldn't be available for field operations. Colonel Hawthorne's voice crackled through their intercepted communications. Central Command is implementing Phase 3. No more test runs. We go operational across all sectors within 48 hours. Phase 3, Pete explained, his military background, providing context. That's the full deployment protocol. They're not just testing anymore, they're preparing to implement their program on a national scale. Rachel's analysis of medical data revealed disturbing patterns. The compounds they're developing, they're designed to create subtle changes in brain chemistry, effects that would be attributed to natural causes, perfect for long-term population control. Through their surveillance network, they watched specialized teams setting up what appeared to be atmospheric monitoring stations, not just around the facility, but across the entire valley. They're establishing an environmental control grid, Dr. Carter noted. These sensors, they're designed to track the spread of chemical agents through natural systems, air currents, water sources, soil composition. Jessica guided Thunder to a higher vantage point, using terrain features that their modern surveillance technology wasn't designed to monitor. Below them, more government vehicles arrived, each carrying equipment that suggested connections to classified research programs. Their personnel rotations are interesting, Bill reported. They're bringing in specialists from other facilities. Names match projects that officially don't exist. Bioweapon research, psychological warfare programs. Mark's analysis of facility systems revealed another layer of concern. These aren't just research labs. They're designed for mass production. Once operational, they could generate enough material to affect major population centers within weeks. Through their command center displays, they watched Colonel Hawthorne coordinating with new teams arriving by helicopter. Each unit's equipment suggested preparation for wide-scale deployment rather than simple containment. Found their target analysis, Tyler added. They've mapped every major agricultural distribution center in the country, planning to introduce their compounds at key points in the food supply chain. Thunder's combat training showed in his perfectly controlled stance as they gathered more intelligence. Years of battlefield experience had taught them both how to read enemy operations, to see patterns others might miss. Their security procedures are evolving, Pete warned. They're not just containing information anymore. These are pre-deployment protocols, getting ready to move their operation into active phase. Dr. Carter's voice carried genuine alarm as he analyzed new data. These formulas, they're not just for behavior modification. They're creating compounds that could fundamentally alter human cognitive patterns, changes that would be permanent once established. Through their surveillance feeds, they watched more specialized teams establish positions around the valley. Each new unit revealed capabilities that went far beyond normal military operations. Just intercepted their primary directive, Rachel reported. This isn't just about control. They're developing ways to make entire populations more susceptible to suggestion, creating a framework for long-term social engineering through agricultural distribution. Jessica processed these developments with combat-honed precision. The syndicate hadn't just created a sophisticated research operation, they were establishing infrastructure for unauthorized experimentation on an unprecedented scale. Thunder's ears tracked movement that their sensors hadn't detected, alerting Jessica to new teams approaching from unexpected angles. The syndicate's operation showed professional planning, but it also revealed an urgency that suggested they were working under pressure from higher authorities. Their command structure goes deeper than we thought, Pete added. Colonel Hawthorne reports to something called the Shepherd Initiative, classified program with connections to multiple government agencies, all records buried under national security protocols. Through their thermal imaging, they watched more teams deploying specialized equipment around the facility perimeter. Each new position revealed sophisticated capabilities and growing. Preparation for major operations found their implementation timeline, Bill reported grimly. Once their distribution network is established, they plan to begin widespread deployment within months, using normal agricultural shipments to spread their compounds across entire regions. Jessica felt thunder shift beneath her as they processed these revelations. The syndicate had created something far more dangerous than a hidden research program. They were establishing infrastructure for unauthorized manipulation of entire populations through the food supply. Stillwater Valley's small community center buzzed with unusual activity as ranchers gathered for what was officially called an agricultural planning meeting. Jessica studied the faces around her, people she'd known for 3 years now revealing depths she'd never suspected. County records show they've acquired 15 properties in the last month, Martha Reynolds announced, spreading maps across the table. The retired librarian's knowledge of local property records proved unexpectedly valuable. All strategic locations, all near mining tunnel access points. Jack Harrison, who ran the local farm equipment repair shop, stepped forward. Found these hidden in equipment they brought in for servicing. He produced several sophisticated surveillance devices, military-grade, same type used in overseas operations. Jessica wasn't the only one with hidden skills. Around the room, ordinary ranchers and shopkeepers demonstrated knowledge that went far beyond their everyday roles. Their communication patterns matched standard private military protocols, Pete observed. The quiet man who delivered their mail had spent 20 years in signals intelligence before retiring to Stillwater Valley. They're coordinating with teams outside the valley, probably part of a larger network. Through their secure video link, Rachel's expertise added crucial insight. They're bringing in specialized teams, not just tactical operators. They've got logistics experts, infrastructure specialists. They're building something big. The morning sun cast long shadows through the community center's windows as Jessica spotted more syndicate vehicles passing slowly. They thought they were watching a simple farmers' meeting. They didn't realize they were under surveillance themselves. They've started targeting our supply chains, Bill reported, his voice carrying decades of business experience. Pressure on distributors, mysterious delivery problems, trying to isolate us economically. Mark studied the gathered intelligence with a combat engineer's eye. They're not just trying to take our land, they're trying to control everything that makes ranching possible. Water supplies, distribution, processing facilities. Got movement at the old Miller place. Tyler's voice crackled through their newly established radio network. The college students' engineering knowledge had helped set up secure communications throughout the valley. Heavy equipment coming in. Looks like they're starting major construction. Jessica felt thunder shift beneath her as she processed these developments. The syndicate thought they were dealing with simple ranchers, easy to intimidate and control. They didn't realize Stillwater Valley's residents had skills and knowledge accumulated over lifetimes. My cousin works for the State Environmental Office, Lisa Martinez added. The quiet woman who ran the local diner had family connections throughout the government. They're pushing through permits for agricultural processing facilities at 6 different locations, all fast-tracked, all using different shell companies. More pieces of the puzzle emerged as community members shared information. The syndicate wasn't just building a criminal enterprise. They were establishing a sophisticated operational network using the valley's legitimate agricultural business as cover. Found these in their supply requisitions? Jack continued, displaying more documents. Industrial-grade ventilation systems, specialized electrical equipment. Whatever they're building underground, it's major infrastructure. Through the community center's windows, Jessica watched Colonel Hawthorne's vehicle pass slowly. The syndicate's commander carried himself with military precision, but his recent movements suggested growing concern about their operations' security. "They've started moving against local businesses," Bill reported grimly. "Pressure on banks to call in loans, mysterious health code violations. Anyone who won't cooperate suddenly has problems." The community center's atmosphere tensed as more reports came in. The syndicate was implementing a comprehensive strategy to take control of Stillwater Valley, using tactics that went far beyond simple intimidation. "Got their surveillance teams moving again," Tyler reported through their radio network, setting up new observation posts around the valley perimeter. Emma watched more syndicate vehicles pass through town, their operators confident in their tactical superiority. They didn't realize that every movement was being observed, every pattern noted by people who knew this land intimately. "They're expanding their operation," Rachel warned through the secure link. "Similar patterns appear in other agricultural communities. This is just the first phase of something bigger." The gathered ranchers processed this information with the same patience they applied to tending their land. The syndicate thought their sophisticated operation guaranteed victory against simple rural people. They were about to learn that sometimes the most formidable opponents are the ones who understand the value of working together. "Got movement at their primary facility," Mark reported. "They're bringing in specialized containment equipment. Looks like they're preparing for major operations." Through their surveillance network, they watched more teams establishing positions around the valley. Each new unit revealed another layer of the syndicate's capabilities and another potential weakness their community could exploit. "My brother works border patrol," Sarah added. "Says they're seeing unusual shipment patterns. Agricultural products being rerouted through specific checkpoints, all connected to shell companies linked to the syndicate." Jessica's combat experience translated each new piece of intelligence into tactical advantage. The syndicate had brought sophisticated planning and military expertise to Stillwater Valley, but they'd forgotten something crucial about rural communities. "Local hunting clubs are ready," Bill reported. "They know every trail and hidden approach in these hills. We've got eyes on all their movement corridors." Rachel's veterinary knowledge provided another tactical edge. Their research requires precise environmental conditions. Any disruption to those conditions creates cascading failures through their entire system. Through their secure network, they coordinated resources that looked normal but served tactical purposes. Grain elevators positioned to monitor movement, farm equipment placed to block access routes, livestock moved to create natural barriers. "Got their water usage patterns mapped," Tyler reported. "They're drawing massive amounts for their cooling systems. Any interruption to that flow forces them to shut down critical processes." The community center buzzed with coordinated preparation as Stillwater Valley's defenders finalized their plans. They might not match the syndicate's military precision or classified technology, but they had something potentially more powerful. "Local cement plant is ready," Jack added. "We can shut down their underground access points permanently if needed. They think they control the tunnels, but we know how to seal them." Through their surveillance feeds, they watched Colonel Hawthorne coordinate more specialized teams. Each new deployment revealed sophisticated capabilities and critical dependencies their community could exploit. "Found their supply lines," Martha reported. "They're dependent on regular deliveries through specific routes. Remove those access points and their whole operation stalls." Jessica felt Thunder's muscles tense beneath her as she processed these preparations. The syndicate had created something complex, dependent on perfect conditions. Now those conditions would become their greatest vulnerability: local emergency. "Services are briefed," Bill confirmed, "ready to implement safety protocols that will restrict access to key areas. All perfectly legal, all difficult to challenge without revealing themselves." Through their command center monitors, they watched more syndicate teams deploy around the valley. Each new security ring revealed sophisticated equipment that shouldn't exist outside classified military programs, and crucial weaknesses their community could target. Found their contingency plans, Rachel reported. They've got protocols for neutralizing entire communities if their research is exposed. They'll sacrifice everything to keep their secrets. Jessica guided Thunder to a better observation point. Using terrain features, their modern surveillance technology wasn't designed to monitor. The Syndicate had brought impressive resources to Stillwater Valley, confident their superior planning. Guaranteed victory. They were about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous opponents are the ones who understand that complex operations have complex vulnerabilities and know exactly how to exploit them. The local aviation club is ready, Mike Anderson reported. The retired crop duster's voice carried decades of flight experience. We've modified our planes with surveillance equipment. They can't challenge routine agricultural flights without exposing their operation. Dr. Carter analyzed more technical data with growing confidence. Their experimental compounds are like high-performance athletes, requiring perfect conditions to function. Any disruption to those conditions creates cascading failures through their entire system. Through their surveillance network, they watched another Syndicate team establish position near the old grain elevator. The operation showed impressive capabilities, but also growing complications as they expanded their research program. Got their shift rotations mapped, Tyler added. They're running 3 teams, but the changeover points create vulnerability windows every 6 hours. Mark finished studying chemical supply manifests with mounting concern. They're accelerating their timeline. These delivery schedules suggest they're preparing for large-scale production within the week. Jessica's experience with combat operations proved crucial as she coordinated their counter-strategy. We'll need to move before they fully establish their production capability. Already have teams in position, Bill confirmed through their secure channel. Local ranching groups provide coverage of all major access points. They know every trail and hidden approach in these hills. Michael studied topographical maps showing the underground facility network. The old mining tunnels have natural ventilation shafts, potential access points they might have missed. Through their command center displays, they watched Colonel Hawthorne implement more security protocols. His operation was professional, but it revealed assumptions about modern warfare that their community could exploit. Local construction crews are prepared, Tyler added, ready to implement emergency road repairs on their primary access routes. Complete with county permits they can't challenge without revealing themselves. Martha appeared with more intelligence from county records, found their property acquisition patterns. They need specific locations for their network, can't just relocate if they lose access. Got their power requirements calculated? Pete reported. They're drawing massive energy for their underground facilities. One transformer failure could shut down critical systems. Rachel's veterinary knowledge provided another tactical option. Their research requires controlled conditions. Introduction of certain agricultural compounds could contaminate their entire operation. The community center buzzed with coordinated planning as defenders finalized their preparations. The Syndicate had brought military expertise and classified technology to Stillwater Valley. Now they would discover that sometimes the most effective resistance comes from people who understand exactly how complex systems can be dismantled through simple actions. Local fire department is briefed, Jack reported, ready to implement emergency protocols that could restrict access to key areas. All standard safety procedures they can't override without questions. Through their surveillance feeds, they watched more specialized teams deploy around the valley. Each new unit revealed another layer of their operation and another potential point of failure their community could target. Found their security rotation schedule, Bill added. They're professional but predictable, following standard military protocols without adapting to local conditions. Jessica felt thunder shift beneath her as they processed these preparations. The syndicate thought their sophisticated planning and government connections made them invincible. They didn't realize they were facing people who understood that sometimes the most effective resistance comes not from matching force with force, but from finding precisely where pressure should be applied. Local utility crews are positioned, Tyler reported, ready to implement emergency repairs that could isolate their facility from critical services, all perfectly legitimate maintenance operations. Dr. Carter analyzed more technical data. Their experimental compounds require precise handling and storage. Any disruption to their containment systems could compromise their entire research program. Through their thermal imaging, they watched Colonel Hawthorne coordinate more specialized teams. The syndicate had created something complex, using classified backing and military expertise to hide their true purpose. But they'd made one crucial miscalculation. Everything's in position, Mark confirmed. Local contractors, emergency services, utility crews, all ready to implement perfectly legal operations that just happen to impact their critical systems. Jessica's combat experience had taught her that sometimes victory comes not from direct confrontation, but from understanding exactly how complex operations can be systematically dismantled through simple, coordinated actions. The community center hummed with final preparations as defenders moved into position. The syndicate had brought impressive resources to Stillwater Valley, confident their superior technology guaranteed success. They were about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous opponents are the ones who understand that sophisticated operations become most vulnerable when facing threats they can't effectively identify or counter without compromising their own secrecy. As morning light spread across Stillwater Valley, the true scope of the syndicate's operation began to emerge. Jessica watched through their surveillance systems as specialized teams rushed to secure not just research materials, but evidence of something far more concerning. Found their complete project files, Tyler reported, his voice tense. Stillwater Valley isn't just one facility, it's the control center for a nationwide network. They're building similar installations in agricultural communities across the country. Rachel appeared on their secure link, her face showing real concern. Just intercepted their emergency protocols. These aren't just research facilities, they're distribution hubs. They're creating infrastructure to spread whatever they're developing. Jessica felt thunder shift beneath her as she processed these revelations. The syndicate's operation went far beyond their valley. They were establishing a sophisticated network, using rural communities as cover for something unprecedented. Got their territorial expansion maps, Martha announced, spreading documents across the command center table. They're targeting specific agricultural regions, all with similar characteristics to Stillwater Valley. Underground infrastructure, isolated locations, minimal oversight. Through their thermal imaging, they tracked more government-grade vehicles arriving. Each new team revealed another layer of their true operation, not just research and development, but preparation for large-scale deployment. They're experimental. Compounds aren't just performance enhancers, Dr. Carter reported, analyzing recovered data. They're creating something that can be distributed through agricultural products, using legitimate farming operations to deliver unauthorized substances. Mark studied the technical specifications with a growing alarm. These aren't just storage facilities they're building. They're designed for mass production and distribution, using farming communities as unwitting delivery systems. Through their tactical displays, they watched Colonel Hawthorne coordinating with new teams arriving by helicopter. Each unit carried specialized containment gear, suggesting they were prepared for handling extremely dangerous materials. Found their command structure, Pete reported, decoding intercepted communications. Colonel Hawthorne isn't just running. This facility, he's coordinating similar operations in multiple states, building a network that can bypass normal regulatory oversight. Jessica's tactical mind connected patterns others might miss. The syndicate wasn't just expanding territory, they were establishing infrastructure that could affect entire populations without their knowledge. Their security protocols just shifted, Pete warned. They're implementing something called Phase 2, which looks like nationwide deployment preparations. Through their surveillance feeds, they watched more government-grade equipment arriving. Each new element revealed another aspect of their true operation, a sophisticated plan to use America's farmland for unauthorized distribution of experimental compounds. Local agricultural testing shows contamination already spreading, Dr. Carter reported. They're not just preparing for future deployment, they're already conducting preliminary trials using unsuspecting communities. Colonel Hawthorne's voice carried cold determination as he coordinated with his teams. The syndicate's operation faced local disruption, but their larger network continued expanding across rural America. Found their facility designs, Tyler added. Every installation is built to the same specifications. Once they perfect their system here, they can replicate it anywhere with similar agricultural infrastructure. Jessica felt thunder tense beneath her as she processed these revelations. The syndicate had created something far more dangerous than a hidden research facility. They were establishing a network that could bypass normal safety protocols and regulatory oversight. Their distribution plans are sophisticated, Martha reported, analyzing recovered documents. Using legitimate agricultural shipments as cover, they could spread their compounds across entire regions without detection. Through their thermal scope, Jessica watched more specialized teams secure the facility. The syndicate's operations showed planning that went far beyond criminal enterprise. They were creating infrastructure for unauthorized human experimentation on a massive scale. Got their research objectives, Rachel reported through their secure link. They're not just developing performance enhancers, they're creating compounds that can influence human behavior, testing methods to control populations through modified food supplies. Mark's farming experience revealed another layer of concern. These distribution methods they're planning, they could contaminate entire crop systems, creating effects that spread through normal agricultural networks. Emma's tactical mind saw the larger threat. Pleasant Valley's resistance had disrupted their local operation, but the syndicate's broader network continued growing. Each new facility they established brought them closer to implementing their true plan. Their emergency protocols are interesting, Pete noted. They're not just protecting research data, they're securing evidence of government connections. This goes higher than Colonel Hawthorne. Through their scope, Jessica tracked more teams arriving with specialized containment equipment. The syndicate had created something that threatened not just Stillwater Valley, but every farming community in America. Found their selection criteria, Tyler reported. They're targeting agricultural regions with specific characteristics, isolated locations, minimal oversight, established distribution networks. Everything they need to hide unauthorized testing programs. Dr. Wong analyzed more technical data with growing concern. These compounds they're developing, they're designed for gradual absorption through normal food consumption. Effects would be nearly impossible to detect until fully implemented. Through their surveillance feeds, they watched more government-grade vehicles arrive. The syndicate had brought sophisticated planning and classified backing to Stillwater Valley, confident their operation was secure. Got their communication protocols mapped, Pete reported. They're using encryption standards I haven't seen since my NSA days. Whatever's down there, it's classified at the highest levels. Jessica watched more specialized teams deploying around the breach site. Their equipment and procedures suggested connections to official organizations that shouldn't be involved with. Criminal operations. Found something in their files, Tyler added urgently. References to Phase 2 sites. They're targeting other agricultural communities across the country. Stillwater Valley isn't just a test site, it's a prototype. Through their thermal scope, they watched Colonel Hawthorne take a secured call, his body language suggesting growing concern. More specialized teams rushed toward the underground facility, their equipment revealing capabilities that shouldn't exist outside classified programs. Got their personnel roster, Rachel added through their secure link. The research teams they're bringing in, they're all former military scientists, specialists in chemical enhancement and biological augmentation. People who officially retired from government work. Dr. Carter's voice carried tension as he analyzed intercepted technical data. These formulas they're developing, they're combining restricted pharmaceutical compounds with classified military chemicals, creating something that could enhance human capabilities beyond normal limits. Through their command center displays, they watched Colonel Hawthorne implement new security protocols. The syndicate's operation showed sophisticated planning that went far beyond criminal enterprise. They were creating infrastructure for unauthorized manipulation of entire populations through the food supply. Jessica felt the weight of the situation pressing on her. This wasn't just a fight for Stillwater Valley anymore. It was a fight for the entire nation. The syndicate's operation was far-reaching, its implications potentially catastrophic. What they were doing wasn't just criminal, it was an unprecedented experiment in mass control, with the potential to affect millions, if not billions, of lives. The knowledge they had about the food supply, the farming industry, and human biology gave them a dangerous edge, one that could reshape society in ways no one could predict. Phase 2 deployment, Pete muttered, his voice cold. They've got something massive planned, and they're willing to risk everything to get it operational. Martha tapped her fingers on the table, the documents strewn across it. They're not just testing compounds. They're experimenting with something that could change the way entire populations behave. If they can control food, they can control people. It's the ultimate form of power. Rachel's face was grim, and they've already started. What's happening here is just a microcosm of what's going on everywhere. The question is, how do we stop it? How do we fight something this deeply entrenched in the system? Jessica's mind raced. The syndicate had placed themselves in the very heart of the nation's agricultural infrastructure. Their research compounds, their distribution networks were designed to be undetectable. The more she thought about it, the clearer the threat became. They could influence entire cities, states, or even the country itself without anyone knowing. It was the perfect cover. But even the most sophisticated systems had weaknesses. Their overconfidence, their reliance on classified technologies and government connections had led them to underestimate one thing: the resourcefulness of a community that knew its land, its people, and its vulnerabilities. "Tyler, where are we with the utility crews?" Jessica asked, her voice firm. "Can they get to the power grids before the syndicate can lock them down?" "They're ready," Tyler responded, his hands flying over a set of control panels. "We've mapped the entire grid. There's a weak point near the north entrance of their underground complex. If we trigger a localized blackout, it'll disable their secondary security systems. They won't be able to see what we're doing, and their communications will go down." "Perfect," Jessica said, her mind already working through the next set of moves. "Dr. Carter, can we interfere with their compounds' chemical systems? You said earlier that their compounds require extremely precise conditions. What happens if we disrupt their containment systems?" Dr. Carter looked up from his screen, eyes filled with a mix of concern and determination. "I've been studying the data we intercepted. If we tamper with the environmental controls, temperature, humidity, airflow, it'll destabilize the compounds. They won't be able to contain them. Even one small mistake, and the whole project could be compromised. But we'll need to time it right. or they'll catch on. Bill glanced over at Jessica. We've got the teams in place. We can target the ventilation shafts from the mining tunnels you suggested. That'll give us access points to introduce localized disruptions without drawing attention. If we disrupt their air supply, it will set off alarms in their system, but it'll buy us time. Jessica nodded. We'll need to move fast. We can't afford to let them adapt. Martha, can we track their data feeds? If we can get our hands on their communications and operational schematics, we can set the stage for Phase 2 disruption. Martha tapped her tablet. I've already intercepted their encrypted comms. They're using government-level encryption, but I've managed to crack part of it. I've got a stream of real-time operational data, including their deployment schedules and personnel movements. If we hit them at the right moment, it could unravel everything. The plan was coming together, but Jessica knew that even with all their preparations, they were still taking a massive risk. The syndicate was dangerous, not just because of their resources, but because of their experience. They had the expertise and the power to retaliate with devastating force. Jack, how's the local fire department? Jessica asked. Any chance we can use their emergency protocols to distract the syndicate and keep them from responding too quickly? We've got them on standby, Jack replied. I've coordinated with the fire chief. We can trigger a series of controlled burns in their primary access roads. It'll block off their main supply routes without giving away our position. They won't be able to get reinforcements in time. Jessica glanced at the team, her mind running through every contingency. This is it, she said, her voice calm but resolute. We're not just fighting for our valley anymore. We're fighting to stop a nationwide threat. Every move counts. Every second counts. The team nodded, each of them feeling the weight of the task ahead. But there was something in their eyes now. Determination. They weren't just a community, they were a force to be reckoned with. As Jessica turned back to the command center displays, the hum of activity filled the room. Surveillance systems, tactical data and communication lines flickered with real-time updates. The syndicate's operation was vast, but it was built on secrecy and complexity, and it was about to fall apart, one simple action at a time. Let's move, Jessica said, her voice steady. We have one shot at this. Let's make it count. The air in the command center was thick with the hum of anticipation, but there was no room for hesitation. Jessica scanned the faces around her, each person focused, calculating the risks, and knowing their roles intimately. This wasn't just about disrupting the syndicate's operations anymore. It was about protecting the future of their communities, and possibly saving the nation from something far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Bill, how long until the utility crews can begin the blackout? Jessica asked, her fingers tapping lightly against the table as she reviewed the surveillance feeds. 10 minutes, Bill replied, his tone sharp. They're in position. As soon as we trigger the blackout, their communications will drop and they'll lose their visual surveillance. The power grid's disruption will be enough to blind their operations for a few crucial hours, but we'll need to stay one step ahead. Jessica nodded, her gaze flicking to the digital clock on the wall. Time was slipping away. If they didn't act fast enough, the syndicate could adapt, reconfigure their systems, and regain control. Tyler, confirm all demolition charges are in place, she ordered. All set, Tyler said, his voice steady. We're hitting the weak points in their infrastructure, wires, relay stations, and any surface entry points we can access. If we make sure their power lines are down, they'll be cut off from backup systems, making it that much harder for them to recover. Rachel, standing to the side, stepped forward. I've been thinking, she said, her brow furrowed with concern. These compounds, they're more than just performance enhancers. They're using them for human behavior manipulation. If their trial runs are already in motion, even a few hundred miles away from Stillwater, we could see ripple effects we can't predict. It's not just about physical contamination. It's about altering decision-making on a mass scale. Jessica's stomach twisted at the implication. She had known the stakes were high, but hearing it put that way, hearing Rachel's medical expertise emphasize the potential for irreversible consequences, sent a chill through her. "We don't have the luxury of waiting for all the data to come in," Jessica said, forcing her focus back to the mission at hand. "We hit them hard, fast, and precisely. Any delay could lead to them unleashing this network faster than we can contain it." Martha leaned over a digital map. "I've been running through their deployment schedules again. They've doubled their security presence around critical access points near the tunnels and underground networks. They'll try to cover every entrance. But they've left a few gaps, particularly near the back entrances. We can use those blind spots to move our teams in and out without triggering their alarm systems. Once we breach their perimeter, we disrupt their compound's internal control." "Systems," Dr. Carter said, his voice grave. "I've found an interface. If we can gain access to it, we can scramble their security protocols, lock them out of their own data, and initiate environmental shutdowns that'll destabilize their research." Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.